Hello, and welcome back to the channel. On this one, we're jumping in with SPAD.neXt in the new user series to cover version 9.13 and newer. We're starting off with how to install SPAD.neXt, how to load the LVAR bridges, and familiarization of the GUI. So let's go ahead, jump in, and get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is come over to SPAD.neXt and head to the download section. So here under download, we can select to download the most current installer, version 9.13. Notice here the important information. Do join the SpadNeXt Discord community because for two parts, one is you get to register your license by sending !link, forget the quotation marks, to the bot or within the bot command channel. That will then tell you how to take the information from your license, from your to-checkout or your SpadNeXt email that told you to your email address, thank you for your purchase, here is your order ID and activation code. You're going to use the order ID number. It's a very small number, it's not the big giant activation code. Once you have linked your license, you'll always be able to use the !license info, which you can send to the bot. That will then reply to you with that same information. Some people somehow lose and delete emails. This is a way that you will never lose access to it. Also, the benefit of Discord is you'll be able to ask questions. Now that we've downloaded the zip file, we're going to go ahead and extract the file. So we'll just extract it here. And now we've got our installer. So go ahead, click on it to run the installer. This will SPAD.neXt. We're going to click yes to continue. We click on yes when our user rights management asks us, do we want to do this? Here's the EULA, read it carefully. If you agree to the terms, go ahead and accept it. So it's going to default it, put it into program files, SPAD.neXt. I let it go into the default locations. If you choose to go somewhere else, that's on you. Also, this is going to create shortcuts in the start menu folder. If you want a desktop shortcut, go ahead and create that. Now that it's complete, we're going to go ahead and hit finish. Now, if you haven't run SPAD.neXt before, you would be able to go ahead and continue without a license and use the trial version. As you can see, if I hit cancel here, it is going to cancel on me because obviously I have run the trial on this machine before and I do have a valid license. So this time around, we're going to go ahead and we're going to enter our email, our order number, so our order ID, and our activation code. Obviously, I'm going to enter these things and hit enter, which you won't see. And now that I have activated it successfully, it's going to lock it to this computer. If you need to move it to a different computer, make sure to deactivate it in the deactivation screen. It starts loading, it's going to download current configuration data, and it's also going to check if it needs to perform any updates. As you can see here, the current released version is 9.13.34. So do you want to install it? I'm going to go ahead and click yes. And now it's going to download the upgrade and install it. Once the installer completes, you will close it. And now you can go ahead, and I usually just type in the name, click enter, and it starts firing up. So as you see during startup, it does the similar type thing, checks online, checks the caches, and then it gets going. Now, before we start going through all of the tabs and the information and breaking down the familiarization, the next thing we want to do is install the LVAR bridge and H events for Microsoft Flight Sim. The LVAR bridge is for FSX or P3D, and if you're an X-Plane user, the bridge for X-Plane as well. So you come to the add-ons, so come down to settings, come to the config wizard, and here you'll be able to install the bridges. Note that because it detects FSX or P3D on this machine, I can go ahead and click on that, which will bring up finding my Steam library and my FSX edition. So you can go ahead and install the LVAR bridge for FSX or P3D, which I no longer have P3D installed. If you had X-Plane, there would be a bridge for X-Plane, and then finally for Microsoft Flight Sim. So bridge 3.8 is the current bridge for working with this version. And with that, we've now installed the LVAR bridges, and we would now be able to go ahead and start up Microsoft Flight Sim. If Microsoft Flight Sim was already running, then you're going to have to shut it down and relaunch it, because that LVAR bridge is being installed as a WASM in your community folder. And so that WASM module has to be loaded on startup. Now that we got SPAD.next and the LVAR/H events bridge installed, let's go ahead and run through the familiarization of the SpadNext UI. So on the left-hand side, this is where we're going to find our main control tabs. So starting at the top, you have the Home tab, which has a bunch of sub-tabs, which we will come back to. Then you've got your Profiles tab, which is going to also contain sub-tabs, which we will come back to. You have your Panels tab, so these are things like CDUs, MCPs, MIDI control panels, SciTech logic panels. This is the grouping that those are going to show up under. Under Controls is where you're going to find your joystick, rudders, throttles, yokes, things of that nature. They will show up inside of here, as well as any custom devices that you may have made from HID devices, so standard joystick boards. Those will all show up under Controls. And then the third kind of devices section is the FIP section, so the flight instrument panels by SciTech/Logitech, as well as if you enable virtual FIPs, if you have that license with Complete or with the add-on for FIPs, you can create a whole bunch of virtual FIPs, which you then detach and place elsewhere. Again, we have videos covering that. The Extras tab is where you're going to come in to find things like the Data Monitor and Event Monitor. Two things very important to figuring out add-on airplanes, finding out what events or what data they're controlling and working with. There are extensive videos that cover these that should be watched when you're trying to work with new planes. Expressions, we're going to cover that a little bit more in detail, but effectively expression allows you to create your own local variable from other variables and then applying a bunch of conditions or data parameters shaping of the variable. So quick example, FS roundup, that was me rounding up the FPS to the nearest whole value so that we weren't getting a bunch of decimal values. That way when I render it on a Stream Deck, it's only rendering every time an entire frame changes, not decimal places. So it's going to put less strain on the system to constantly render that output. Things like scripts, client events, and then virtual devices. So with the virtual devices, this is where you can add more of those virtual FIPs. Client events is where you would add H events, LVARs, things that are not showing up inside of SPAD.next yet, and you need to get them working, like brand new H events for, say, the Boeing plane that hasn't been released yet. Well, somebody may be accessing it in an early beta alpha flighting of Microsoft Flight Sim. They have access to it and they would be able to manually add those events. Or if you have a third-party plane that introduces their own H events, you can go in and add those in the client events. Again, there's videos that cover how to do that. Here under the published information, these are your published profiles, your published snippets, and any images that you may have published. I have published some images, it's just not showing up here yet. I don't know if this part of the system is active. But this is not where you go to find other people's snippets and profiles. This is where your own stuff is stored. Then under the Settings tab, so this is the information regarding settings and all of that information which we will break down. Two other little pieces on the left which are important is the Save button for saving your current profile. So if I make any changes, it usually goes red. I click on it, it then saves the changes I have made. There is a setting for autosave. I don't run that. This is one of the most important features. This is called programming mode. Programming mode is helpful, and it's one of those features we'll jump into right now because it will help you as a user. When you enable the Lego block, hence when people say the Lego block, looks like Lego, when you're in programming mode, if you press a button on any joystick or device, you're going to see that it jumps straight to that joystick or device in the user interface. Now, a lot of times I will enable it. I will press a button to get to the button that I am triggering on that joystick. Then I will disable programming mode, so now I can edit the events that I want to assign to that button without causing a problem. Because if I started editing something and I bumped it with, like, say, touching my rudder, I don't want it skipping to a different portion of the GUI and exiting out from where I'm currently editing. Starting at the top, what is all in the Home tab? So under the Home tab, well, this is what it opens on. Home. Well, this is also going to have a link to the Discord. Highly recommend you join the Discord. Link your license. Send !license, or sorry, link, !link to the bot. You can send !lice, L-I-C, info, to the bot at any time after you've linked it, and it will give you all of your information like the activation code and what versions you're entitled to. Under News, you are going to get the SpadNeXt updates and news. This is not heavily updated because this is for important information and things that have had impacts in trying to find that information. Again, the Discord is much more effective. Video guides. Hey, just like this video guide here, which is going to be replacing this specific video right here. Because we have come a long ways since 0.9.10, and things have changed even within the even within the GUI, the user interface, as well as some of the other options. So the video guides have everything categorized. So if I want to look at things specific to the 414. Now, understand that some of these videos still apply to the device and or other planes. The plane is being used as an example, but that example can be applied to other things, like finding LVARs, finding H events, finding what events are fired by a plane. So sometimes you want to mix and match devices and planes, because I may have a TCA yoke, or I've got a Cytec switch panel, but I want to know how to configure buttons and knobs that would be on an alpha that would match to those devices. So these become very helpful. So everything is broken down into sections, making it very easy to peruse and find what it is that you're looking for. Discord, if you click on it, it is going to take you to the Discord group. Hence, your browser has been opened. FAQ, so there is some frequently asked questions. Those are available. You can click on it there. Any NOTAMs, so any important information that's published, like vacations, like systems being down, can be published into there. Release notes. So all release notes for the most recent versions will be updated inside of here, as well as the change log, which is then usually interim dot releases that have taken place in between the major releases that fall under the release notes. So this is kind of the work in progress information. So again, a lot of information can be found right here. When we come to the Profiles tab, this is where you have your profiles. Now we have a video about profiles, and we'll even be updating it recently, but basically the way to think about profiles is you build a profile for a plane or a group of planes that you want the controls to be identical and have no differences. If I want to have planes that are similar but have different assignments on different buttons, then I'm going to duplicate a profile. So if I wanted something that was going to be similar to the H-Jet, but I have to tweak a few things, I would do a new profile from this. So that would duplicate the profile. I would give it a new name, and then I can assign different aircraft to it. So a profile consists of all of the device assignments as one big group being applied to a plane. And so that's why you'll see I have lots of profiles, and each profile basically is for a different plane. Online profiles allows you to go and find profiles that have been published by people who have been kind enough to share their work. Understand that profiles are, as we said, a complete collection of all of the devices that this person has and has published for this profile. If you have different devices or don't have some of the devices, or you have devices that that person does not have, it will not supply you with maybe what you're looking for. There is a separate snippet system which allows you to download individual devices or even individual switches on an individual device into your profile. And again, we cover snippets in a separate video. On the left, in my case, what you see is some sections which are effectively folders. Same thing for any of my FSX profiles. I created FSX and I put in the slash, and then the P3Ds, the same thing. So for me, because I don't use these very much anymore, I went ahead and renamed them all and put them into slashes to put them into folders inside of my profiles. Inside of your panels, we kind of cover this with an overview. This is where all those devices show up. So my Stream Deck, my X-Touch, my MCP, my APHIS. Any of these devices are going to show up inside of here. However, that requires that we've taken care of enabling things in device settings. Joysticks, we already explained, it's very much like panels. It's each one of these devices, but these are all the ones that show up as HID joystick type devices. Some of these devices will get some kind of a user interface like the Bravo if the developer has built a custom interface. But that's the thing about these types of devices. They are all just HID joystick devices. And so anything will show up. Virpil, you name it, joysticks will show up here, including VJoy, including my Arduinos, including anything that I've built as a HID joystick. For the FIPS, this is where we come for the FIPS. We do have videos on the FIPS, but essentially it'll populate all of your FIPS. You'll see them, and you'll be able to add gauges. Note, depending on what you have for gauges and folders, you can add folders where you've placed your gauges. There are demo gauges, there are the standard online free gauges, and then there are the standard SciTech gauges as well. Or you can go to places like fipgauges.com where you can purchase additional gauges that he has created, and then you can have those and load those to your FIPS as well. Anything that you want, you can also create controls for the individual buttons. Obviously, custom FIP gauges like this include a bunch of this already assigned to them, including all the knobs and buttons with a lot of information. I did cover the add-on section, but again, we have the data monitor. We have a video on it. You can undock it. So yes, you can run the data monitor and then go back to your joysticks and still have it running. You have your event monitor, the expressions, as we mentioned. You can create your own. If we just look at a quick one, here you see roundup and then the data var. So, and then we hit the validate and we can see we're currently running at 120 frames. Publish snippets and online snippets. So again, there are profiles, but then there are also online snippets. I myself publish everything. So as you can see, I published one profile way back when, which was for the Vision Jet, because I got asked to do that, and I was traveling at the time, so I needed to get it done before I had left. But on the published snippets side of things, this is where myself and many other people publish most of these devices. And the reason for doing this is you can publish complete devices, but you can also publish individual switches and functions of a switch if you so desired. So the complete device allows me to perform a complete device assignment that I share. And then that way people can have their own profile with their combination of devices. And then ones that are similar to what I may have to share, they're able to download that one device into their profile and get a complete device of that device, while another device, like say they've got a Real Sim Gear GFC 500 controller. I don't have a GFC 500 controller, so I can't put that in my profile. They have it in their profile. They would be able to download that GFC controller from a different user who published their configuration. So the other beautiful thing is if you have a complete edition, you can also click on these little eyeballs on the left-hand side when you are searching for a snippet. Obviously in my snippet, I see it here, but when you search for a snippet, you'll have these eyeballs in the same place. And if you click on the eyeball, again, complete device only feature, but you would be able to, with that complete device and with the complete edition, you would be able to look at the entire device and see all of the assignments and what has been configured on it. So that's a nice feature for the complete edition. Okay, so under settings, under registration, this is the area where you come in for your registration, what you're all licensed for. You could reload your license. You can buy add-ons, so being able to add add-ons to your system. Obviously, in my case, I don't need these add-ons because my system is the complete edition, so I can already do X-Plane, Microsoft Flight Sim, and Virtual FIPS are part of the complete edition already. The other thing to note is if I needed to renew my update subscription, I can come in here to renew my update subscriptions. Do note that there is a lifetime or a perpetual lifetime subscription. So if you buy that, then it's for the life that it's being made. Yearly ones only apply to yearly. The other thing will be that if you come into registration and you don't have complete edition, you will also have something here which allows you to click on it, which would allow you to upgrade to complete edition. So if you bought the Microsoft Flight Sim edition and then you need to do an upgrade, you don't have to worry. It will carry forward the value for you and you pay an upgrade fee. So again, you do all of this from right inside of the application. You don't go and buy another copy or pay for a full copy. If you want to move your license to another machine, this is where you use the deactivate license. Again, go to the Discord, link your license. So that's hit the link, right? So exclamation point, link, send that to the bot. He'll ask you to send him the order ID. You will respond with the order ID, which is the short number, not the activation code, the order number. You'll respond with that from your email. That will make sure that at any time you can go back to the bot and you can send license info to the bot, and the bot will give you back your activation information. So in case you lose that email. If you deactivate the license, it makes it easier for transferring. If I upgrade my machine and I build a new machine, I'm going to deactivate the license on the old machine, go to the new machine, and activate the license. If drastic changes happen to your PC, or with some newer motherboards, they have security features that will change the system's hardware ID because of a BIOS setting. When those things happen, it may change your hardware ID, in which case you may have to reactivate your license again. Application settings. So here we start getting into some more of the details of setting up SPAD.next and what elements you want to run. So here I've got automatic update check on, which means every time it loads up, it's going to check for updates. You can also force it to check now. I can minimize when starting, so as soon as it starts up, it automatically goes to the system tray. You can exit when connection to the SIM is lost, so if the SIM goes away, you close the SIM, you can set it that it automatically closes SpadNext. I leave this off, I manually do that. Taskbar notifications, so again, if you want notifications that SPAD needs to send, those can show up in the taskbar notifications. The splash screen with complete edition, you can turn the splash screen on and off. Minimize to system tray. If you want to minimize to the system tray, so then instead of minimizing to the bar, now when it starts, it'll minimize all the way to the system tray. Enhance power warnings. I leave this on because when USB devices get plugged in or something happens, they get moved, or Windows decides to turn it back on, I want SPAD to tell me that something has power saving mode enabled. That's important because that's why devices will disappear on you. SPAD is not auto polling constantly. It only checks for devices on startup. That way it doesn't get into problems. Virtual power. If you like having your panels and devices go dark based on a sim variable like avionics, if avionics power is off, I want my panels to all power off. You need to enable global power. This is something that I disable. I don't care that my panels are displayed and power is on, but for other people they do. Just means you have to not only turn this on, it means for every one of those panels you have to make sure to set up what variable they are tracking for the planes to turn on and off. If you're having trouble with things turning on or not turning off, you can come and disable this temporarily while you work out the kinks. Simulations. What simulations are enabled? So FSUI PC support. If you use FSUI PC for anything, you can go ahead and enable this, so then it will show up as a provider inside of SPAD and you'll be able to interact with FSUI PC offsets. I don't need it for anything, so I just leave it off. SimConnect, that's the main SimConnect for Microsoft Flight Sim and P3D, so obviously I leave that enabled. I don't do iRacing, I don't do Euro Truck Simulator, and I don't do X-Plane. If you do those and you have Complete Edition, you can enable these, or you need the add-on for X-Plane support if you're the Microsoft side. Profiles. So, automatic profile switching, one of the best features of SPAD. I have this enabled. This means every time I change a plane, it's going to change to the profile that is assigned to that plane. If the plane I'm in does not have a profile assigned to it, it will then prompt me to say, hey, this one is not assigned to anything yet. Do you have a profile you want to assign it to? That way I add a new livery, I launch that new livery, it'll say, hey, this new HJet livery, do you want to assign it to your HJet profile? And I'll say yes. Automatically load last profile, so this is up to users and you decide. Does it load the last profile it was using on update? And then as I mentioned, there is an autosave profile changes that you can enable, so you don't have to come over and keep hitting the save button if you want that. Under expert channel, so is expert mode enabled? This changes the way the UI behaves. So especially with things like conditions, instead of spelling out the word equal, you will see the equal symbol. Greater than, less than, it won't be words, it will be the brackets, so that sort of information. Update channel. If you have the Complete Edition, you can change this to the beta channel. That is a benefit of having the Complete Edition. You can run the betas. And on top of that, if you have a device that the developer needs to work with you on, and you would make this through the alpha builds, he may enable you to use the alpha, but that's all handled through Discord, and it's all handled when there's a specific new device or feature he's trying to implement and he's looking for users who can test it. Remember all positions and sizes, so you can have it that all of your windows, pop-outs, things of that nature, remember their positions and sizes, so that way SPADs, vFIPs, and virtual FIPs and other things will go to specific places. Network installation. Are you running this on the same local machine as Microsoft Flight Sim or FSX or X-Plane? Or are you running this on a networked computer that has the devices connected to it? So if I'm on the network, I would say network installation, then it asks for the information. In the Discord, there is a how-to guide on network installation because you also have to edit some SimConnect files. Disable unconfigured device wizard. So you could have a device plugged in and it's going to pop up and it's going to say, hey, this device is unconfigured. Depending on the device, it may or may not have an automatic profile that can be applied. So it's a device configuration which is housed in the profiles, basically like a snippet, but it's built into the system. There's a lot of devices don't have this, so do what you like. If you are a gauge designer, your license will have this enabled. Again, that's for people who design gauges. Localization mode, so again, show tags instead of values. That's for things that have tags. Again, localization. Performance monitor, so you can open up a performance monitor and see performance data. So remote service port, so this is what SPAD runs its remote services on. It's using 8181, and you can click here to see what the available remote events are. So when you click on that, it will prompt you because it's going to pump out a PDF. And so once you've got that PDF, you can come in and it will allow you to see all of the events that you can access through the service. Disable Windows Screensaver. So I have that enabled, so it won't allow, when SPAD's running, won't allow Windows to go to screensaver. Borderless full screen, so you can enable it. So when you're in full screen mode, it's borderless. You can have a disable clipboard warnings. So if you're having issues with not being able to access the clipboard, there are some screen sharing systems, screen sharing VNC type things, which won't allow you access to the clipboard because they've basically blocked it. You have a global setting for long presses, so 1,000 milliseconds. So 1 second is the default for how long is a long press. If you want long press to be longer or shorter, you can change it there. Backups, as you do profiles and you make saves and changes, it will create profile backups. Same when it launches, it wraps up and saves some backups. So you can set 0 for no backups. You can set -1 for unlimited. I have a maximum of 10, so it'll roll over after 10. And of course, I have profile backups enabled. Web ports, this is what's used for accessing the WebSocket and REST API services. It's also needed to be enabled if you want to use the fly-by-wire or the other CDUs that use WebSockets. So here we enable it. I didn't have to enable the other items because enable access for web to virtual devices like virtual FIPS, web for allow access for remote control. So currently I have those disabled. For FSX P3D, if you run those, you can have things like PMD support enabled, TFDI support enabled, iFly, and Majestic support. Notice under 2020, there is no PMDG. It is assumed. Turns out it's one of the most popular planes ever, and it's just easier to assume that it is enabled. So you can enable the fly-by-wire CDU socket. So this is how we can do WebSockets to get the screens for the CDUs. And currently supported is fly-by-wire, so that uses the MCDU. Must come from the SIM bridge, hence it has a port for it. And then there is a secondary port for the direct connection, like what we make for doing the working title CJ4 using the Demented Monkey mod. So there's the Demented Monkey mod, and again in the Discord, under the CDU hardware channel, there is also links to go and find the Demented Monkey mod, which will output the data, very much similar to how fly-by-wire does it over WebSockets, and sends it out for SPAD to display. Aircraft directories, so where is it going to find the directories? It does this automatically on the first one, but if you have other places, other directories that you keep planes and then do other links and you want it to have access to it, you can specify where those directories are. Overall application directories, so application data, where does it keep its application data? So its configuration for the app itself, that's in this location. There is a button on the right hand side, so you can go ahead and browse to it if you needed to change the location. By default, SPAD documents are kept in your user documents folder, your My Documents folder. This can cause problems if you have Office 365 enabled. It can have problems with migrating or not updating properly, and then you won't see your documents. If you're using Office 365, it's not a bad idea to move SpadNext out of the documents. Maybe put it on the desktop, or just put it on a D drive, or even your C/SPAD, and just put it somewhere else so it's not getting conflicting. Configuration data is found in the conf, the logs, your profiles directory, which is under documents, SPAD.next, profiles, and then you got your gauges and your scripts. So this is where you find, hey, where does SPAD save files to? This is where they are. Same thing like where do I find the logs? Configuration wizards, we already covered this, but this is where you come to run the config wizards, including running the installation of the LVAR H event bridge from Microsoft Flight Sim, as well as any other sims you're running. Under your devices, this is where we have the enabling in general of devices. So things that we do want it to control. So it is possible to run some devices and others not. If for whatever reason you like another device's dedicated software, you could run that instead and just make sure you've disabled it. So if you have Scholarchy, you can enable it. Joysticks. So in general, you need to enable basic general joystick support. Once that's enabled, then any of the other joysticks will individually show up. So this is that example where I could exclude a joystick completely from SPAD.neXt because I only want it to show up somewhere else. MIDI devices. So is MIDI enabled? If so, then I've got my X-Touch Mini. It's on. Then you can emulate a X-Touch Mini emulate. Note off with a velocity of 0. And you can enable output. So I need the output so I can send MIDI data back to the X-Touch. If I had more devices, they would show up as additional devices. Under the other devices section, you'll see I can enable support for the Sim Innovations Knobster. I do not have a Knobster, so I don't enable it. Script panel. So I use the script panel for a lot of things. Sometimes I use it for callouts. I use it for a bunch of other features. This is where you make sure it's enabled so it will show up under your panels. For Cockpit Simulator, do you have General Cockpit Simulator support enabled? If yes, then you will be able to enable things like the CDU, the AFIS, and the MCP. It'll automatically add those devices here, and the individual device settings you can make for them. Stream Decks. So each Stream Deck can be independently enabled. So first I can go ahead and enable it. Then here you can see I have a Stream Deck which I don't have SPAD controlling, and I leave it under Stream Deck software control. While I have another Stream Deck, which is my Stream Deck Other XL, which I do have for SPAD control, and that one I enable. So in the Stream Deck software, I have that one loaded with a blank profile. Nothing is in it for that Stream Deck, while this Stream Deck has a different profile with all of my other buttons that I want to control other features of my computer. If you rotate your Stream Decks and mount them in rotation, you can actually in here tell SPAD how to render to these so that it will rotate them. Under the other, you can also control Stream Deck brightness. So each Stream Deck, I can then enable the brightness and whether or not it's supposed to go dark when SpadNeXt exits. If you own GoFlight products, so obviously here it's disabled because I don't have GoFlight. And then for a panel by panel, you can enable them one at a time. For Open Cockpits, do I have Open Cockpit support enabled? I do, but I don't have any Open Cockpit devices, so I could just disable that. If you have a BIP, you can enable BIP support and whether or not it supports virtual power. Here, I don't own a BIP yet, I still have it enabled. I do own a Cessna yoke, it's just not currently plugged in. FIPS, do we have FIPS plugged in? Do we have FIPS support? Do we boost the rendering? So here I'm boosting the rendering, meaning I'll use more CPU cycles, but that's okay. I have a 5800X3D. Then inside of here, I've got my global brightness. Then you've got your features for setting what the buttons do. Light equals button mode. I have this disabled. I use SimVars to control the lights, so I don't want button presses controlling the lights. I do not use virtual power. So I've disabled that so it never accidentally toggles the screen on and off. And then use default paging buttons, or I've got set page up, page down LEDs on by default. So here you could set this use paging buttons, so use the default paging so it changes, or you can manually add that feature to the buttons yourself. I always leave those two buttons lit up, so I leave this in the on state. Under the multi-panel, is it enabled? Different multi-panels based on their year actually behave differently, and there's no way to know about it. So it's all on how it operates. So here, skip every second click. So in my case, my unit, if I move one click, it sends 2 clicks. So here it'll skip every second click, so it will only send 1 click on the physical click taking place. Tuner poll rate, 0 means it's going to constantly poll it. you could slow that down if you were having issues with missing events. SciTech Pro Yoke, so do you have a Pro Yoke enabled? Yes. Quadrants, radio panels, so again, you could say yes, the radio panel, and individual device virtual power support. Remember, I've got virtual power disabled globally, so that overrules anything on a device-by-device basis. Switch panel, so the SciTech switch panel, it's enabled. Send initial switches, and then I have swap R and L in UI to match device. So on the device, right label is on the left, left label is on the right. So this is yes. In the UI, I would like it to display the same way it looks on the panel. And again, virtual panel support, whether or not you've got it. The SciTech throttle prop mixture, so the Cessna looking device. I do have one, but it's in the garage. The SciTech trim wheel, is it enabled or not? Those ones I hated because they're an axis, not actually a button up, button down device. Serial devices. So do you have serial devices enabled? Yes, and then you have to manually add those devices because it can't know about them. These are things like real SIM gear devices, VR Insight devices, things that require a serial. You would add the device, you're going to pick which COM it's on, though I've already got all my COM ports pretty much full, but we'll use one as an example. And then you have SPAD protocol, like my custom devices that use the SPAD protocol and other people's custom devices. You have the real SIM gear protocol, and you have the VR Insight protocol. So these will set up some of the controls automatically for you. With SPAD, you specify them. Once you've shown them up, you would close and come back. Again, for all these individual devices that we have done videos for, please review those. It shows you the whole setup from start to end. Then you've got the Ultimark pack drives. So these are the LED drivers, the LED 64. Those are cool devices. I do have one, I just haven't really used it. And then finally, virtual avionics. Is it enabled for the MCP and APHIS? Though the APHIS is a very limited partial implementation because of lack of support coming from virtual avionics. So those devices are kind of dead. I myself got rid of mine a while ago. Well, sorry, put them on a shelf a while ago. I don't use them. And I upgraded to the cockpit simulator units. They are much, much better. Appearance, this may look different than yours, and that's because I came in and I chose to have blue highlight. Maybe you want the red, maybe you want orange instead. You can go ahead and change the appearance. You can pick a dark theme or a light theme. I prefer dark. And then the overall font size that you're using. Under support is where you can come to see your existing tickets, to create new tickets, to update existing tickets. So anything that you need to deal with a ticket. So you would be able to click on a ticket, you could update the ticket, close the ticket, view the ticket, and it'll take you to the ticketing system. Or you could just create a whole new ticket as required. And then one of the most important pages is the status page. Very helpful for the different simulators. It's something to keep in mind. If something isn't working or controlling, always good to come in here to see, like, do we have the LVAR bridge? Is it connected and running? Yes. Okay, it's connected, it's running. Good to know. If I've got PMDG enabled, is it connected? So here, because I'm not in the PMDG aircraft and running, I'm currently not connected. But I might also have that not connected if I didn't enable the INI file. So again, watch the PMDG videos, including the first one, which is do these steps first. Or go to the Discord and look in the pin messages, and the item is the first pin message on what to do. And yes, you have to do it to each edition. The 600, the 700, the 800, and the 900, they all have their own work folders and their own option INI file. So then, of course, you've got your main SimConnect session, and it's running. You also see it down here at the bottom. So happy to finally get around to updating this for version 0.9.13. And one last thing before you head out, don't forget, please join the Discord. It will be helpful. Link your license. It'll save you hassles in the future if a drive dies. Again, public service announcement, join the Discord, ask your questions there, not in the videos. Anyway, if you made it this far, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and come along with us next time. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.